This is question number 1 of homework 13 for chapter 17. Suppose that auto workers in South Korea can produce components used to make cars at the rate of 10 sets of components per worker per day and can assemble cars at the rate of 4 cars per worker per day. In North Korea, auto workers can produce components at the rate of 10 sets of components per day and can assemble cars at the rate of 2 cars per worker per day. So looking at these numbers, we can see that the workers in South Korea and North Korea have the same productivity, same absolute productivity in terms of component production, because they can both produce 10 sets of components per day per worker. But South Korea workers are more productive. They have absolute higher productivity in terms of the car assembly, because they can assemble 4 cars, but the workers in North Korea can only assemble 2 cars per day. And the question is, what is the opportunity cost of car assembly in terms of component production in each country? So the opportunity cost is defined to be, in this case, suppose the workers, instead of producing the cars, assembling the cars, they produce components within the same time. So because one day, within one day, the workers in South Korea, they can produce, they can assemble 4 cars and produce 10 sets of components. So in terms of the component production, each car assembly costs 10 over 4, that is 2.5 sets of components. So the first is the opportunity cost of a car assembly in South Korea should be 10 over 4 sets of components. So that's 10 over 4, that's 2.5. So that's defined to be, if instead of assembling one car, how many components can a worker produce. So that's the opportunity cost of assembling one car in terms of the component production. So and in this case is 10 over 4, 2.5. Similarly, the North Korea workers, it's 10 over 2, so that's going to be 5 sets of components. So now let's check our answer. Nice work. So the second part of the question is, if one economy exports components and the other exports assembled cars, which economy will export cars according to the theory of comparative advantage? So the theory of comparative advantage says that a country which has a comparative, note it's a comparative instead of absolute advantage, because in this case, actually South Korea workers, they have sort of absolute advantage over the cars, over the cars production, because they can produce 4 cars per day, but the North Korea workers, they can only assemble 2 cars per day. So in terms of the absolute advantage, South Korea's workers have the absolute advantage. But what matters is not the absolute advantage, it is the comparative advantage. So that's defined to be the relatively speaking, what's the productivity of, what's the opportunity cost of the workers in terms of the car assembly. So looking at the opportunity cost, the South Korea workers is 2.5 sets of components, and North Korea workers is 5 sets of components. So in this case, actually South Korea workers, they also are comparatively, they also have the comparative advantage over the car assembly, because their opportunity cost of producing the cars, assembling the cars, is only half of the opportunity cost of assembling cars for North Korea workers in terms of the component production. So according to the theory of comparative advantage, South Korea should assemble and export cars. But even though in this case, based on these numbers, South Korea workers should assemble and export cars, but sometimes if the number change, then the answer might also change. So what matters is this opportunity cost. So we should check which number here is lower, because the absolute higher number here, absolute productivity here, doesn't necessarily mean a lower number here. So that's why, and because if you have a higher number here, if you South Korea workers also have a very high absolute productivity in terms of the component production. For example, here it's going to be 30. So suppose South Korea workers then can assemble or can make components at 30 sets of components per day. So in that case, the opportunity cost of a car assembly in South Korea will be 30 over 4. That's gonna be 7.5. So 7.5 is gonna be higher than 5 for North Korea workers' opportunity cost of assembling cars. So in that case, actually North Korea should assemble cars, not South Korea, and export cars. So the numbers here will determine who export cars. It's not necessarily this will be the unique and unique answer. The answer here depends on the numbers, but it's just in this case, South Korea workers turn out to have also the comparative advantage in terms of the car assembly. So they should also export cars.